Hi, I'm Professor Beck Strah.
And I'm Professor Eric Bronson, and you're listening to Prison Breakdown.
2, 3, break!
Hate to spoil his fun, but we're gonna bust out of here.
2, 3, break!
I'm locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
2, 3, break!
I can honestly say I'm a changed man. No danger to society here. God's honest truth.
2, 3, break!
I'm not leaving this cell. I'll get out my way. The right way.
2, 3, break!
Ahoy, dudes! Welcome back to another episode of Prison Breakdown. I am joined again today by my co-host,
Ahoy, ahoy.
Dr. Eric Bronson.
Ahoy. Boy, we got
Ahoy to you.
we got a special one today. Go and as always, gotta mention the weather. Gorgeous day in Rhode Island. Oh my goodness.
Shut up about the weather.
So good. Oh, it would suck to be in Seattle right now, Britt. Oh my God, this weather is so. These are the types of days that justify living in Rhode Island. Oh my goodness, 73 degrees, sunny. It is perfect.
I know it's a terrible 78 and sunny here in Seattle. It really is. You're right.
That's fake news.
Insert like a wah, 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 wah
Fake news.
right there.
That's fake news. I've seen more accurate counts of the people at Trump rallies. Yeah. Well, everything is wonderful. And boy, we got a special episode today, don't we?
Tell me, Eric, why do we have a special episode?
Tell
me why is that?
Because we have current Lieutenant Joshua Kennedy from the West Warwick Police Department, who is a former correctional officer with the Rhode Island Department of Correction, who's going to join us and talk to us a little bit about his career and what all goes into being a correctional officer and how that has informed his career as a police officer. So really looking forward to that discussion with him.
Hey, that sounds awesome. And I know that Mr. Kennedy is also currently a master's student at the Roger Williams University School of Justice Studies in our criminal justice master's program.
One of our many wonderful programs. And hey, isn't it fantastic that one of our students is coming to join us? And they also, the Roger Williams University School of Justice Studies, also happens to be our sponsor. So shout out to them.
What?
Shout out to them.
Shout out to them. Thank you, Roger Williams University School of Justice Studies. We appreciate you, and we love that you sponsor this podcast and continue to give us a job.
Yeah. And these students, tremendous education. Remember, ranked in the tops, our criminal justice program ranked in the top 6% in the country for student outcomes. That's fantastic.
Hell yeah.
So I have some, a next little stage in what the hell's been going on in that California prison that was recently shut down for female inmates. So if we want to get to
wait, you have to, you got to back it up first, my friend.
Let's get to
that
have to
news
say
hot
off the razor wire.
That's better.
Fresh news, hot off the razor wire.
Okay, today's news. The closure of the California federal prison was poorly planned, according to a judge, and ordering further monitoring. A federal judge says a plan to close a troubled prison in California where female inmates suffered sexual abuse by guards was ill-conceived, like Swiss cheese full of holes. Yes, so that's right from the judge. But the plan to close a troubled prison in California where female inmates suffered sexual abuse by guards was ill-conceived, the judge said, while ordering close monitoring and care of incarcerated women who were moved to other federal facilities across the country. U.S. District Court Judge Yvonne Gonzalez-Rogers said in Wednesday's order that last month's decision by the Bureau of Prisons to shut down FCI Dublin created serious concerns for the well-being of more than 600 women who were transferred out. Specifically, she was talking about the health needs of these inmates who were being shipped around. And that they simply were put on buses and moved around without those medical concerns being taken care of. So,
Oof.
yeah, I that's just what a consistent problem we seem to have with correctional facilities and Department of Corrections throughout the country. But you'd expect better from the Department of Corrections, or excuse me, the Federal Bureau of Prisons. You'd expect better of them, that they wouldn't have these types of issues. They're supposed to be the preeminent prison system in the United States, right? And they're running the same issues as other Department of Corrections.
Is this that same bananas prison that we talked about last episode, where they had the name like the Rape Club or something?
Yes,
absolutely,
it absolutely
horrendous.
is. Rape camp.
Oh,
Yep.
Bananas is a pretty soft word to describe that.
Bonkers. There's not a good enough word in our language to describe that.
Sure.
Yes, this is the same prison. So that's the reason why I went, because the day after we recorded last, the judge comes out and makes this announcement about what the hell is going on. So it's kind of an ongoing saga. Now they have slowed down the closure in hopes that there can be other groups and people to help monitor what the hell is going on. And I guess rather than Swiss cheese, we go to what? Brie?
Swiss cheese. Why Swiss cheese? I'm tired of this Swiss cheese slander. Like,
I'm tired of the Swiss cheese analogy. Just stop it.
That are like infinitely worse. Like Robert Kennedy Jr.'s brain.
Worm infested. Yes, maybe we need to get some federal judges saying things like that, and then it was ill-conceived, like Robert Kennedy Jr.'s brain, full of holes.
Not smoother, but better, I guess.
Yes, exactly. And maybe that might help people realize how serious the situation is. So that's our news for today.
Thank you for the update.
Absolutely.
And with that, we are going to throw to our interview with Lieutenant Kennedy of the West Warwick Police Department, former employee of the Rhode Island Department of Corrections. Here's that interview.
Let's get into it.
So we are joined today by Lieutenant Joshua Kennedy. Lieutenant Kennedy is currently with the West Warwick Police Department and has served formerly as a corrections officer with Rhode Island Department of Corrections. Welcome, Josh. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. How are you?
I am outstanding. Thank you. Today, we want to ask you a few questions about your time with Rhode Island DOC and just some of your insights and hear about some of your experiences from your time there. So just as a quick rundown, can you tell us about like your time working at Rhode Island Department of Corrections, the facilities you worked at, and how long you were with the organization?
I started there in 2002, and I worked there till late 2004. So almost 3 years I worked there, 20 years ago now, over 20 years ago. Again, I started in 2022. We went through a 9-week academy for them. And then after that, I was at the John J. Moran building, which was Medium 1. It's the building that's still open today. And I spent my entire time there. And as soon as I got off my probationary period, I bidded a block. So I was in block Fox Left for the entirety of my career.
And when you mentioned the academy there, that was one of the things I was really interested in, about a 9-week program. What sorts of things were they covering there? Other than, I'm sure you had some time period about how to handle, physical confrontations, that sort of thing. But what else were they talking to you about in terms of how to communicate with the offenders, all that sort of stuff? What sorts of things were they covering in the 9-week academy?
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, it's a lot to stuff into any type of program in 9 weeks like that. It was a lot of material, a lot of information, because with a correctional officer, you're asked to do so many different things and facilitate so many different services to different people that you're interacting with in the facility. So what I remember as far as what they really focused in on as it relates to communication with inmates was the thing that rings out to me to this day in my current job is to be firm, fair, and consistent. That was kind of their mantra that they really instilled in us. They really wanted us to, they established, listen, these are people. You're going to be living with them for 8 to 16 hours a day, sometimes more. And if you start off with on the wrong foot, treating people a certain way, you're not going to make it too long. You really have to treat them as human beings. And obviously they're criminals. They're there to do their time, but you're not there to make it any worse than it has to be for them already. So basically, that would be the thing I would remember. The most clear thing that was really hammered into us was be firm, fair, and consistent. And that, that stuck with me to what I do now. Just to kind of, bring it all around today.
That's fantastic. Was that a point that was emphasized as much in the policing academy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was a theme, definitely. I think that because of the nature of corrections and you're in the block. I mean, you're not in there with your tools. You're in there with a pair of handcuffs, a flashlight, and a radio. And my particular block, I had 72 inmates with just me, and my partner was in the bubble. And then I had another partner on the other side where he had his own guys. So altogether, 3 guys had a lot of people. And I think that interpersonal communication, they did a pretty good job. I mean, even though it was 24 years ago, and we're not obviously in the time we're in now where, de-escalation and communication and all these buzzwords that we hear, they weren't practiced in that kind of curriculum as we have them now. But I think at the time it was a good start, to communicate, to also be aware that, these people the inmates are going to try and, manipulate you to see what they can get, to see what they can get out of it. They're good at, they're intelligent. They can detect weakness, and they can detect if, you're kind of unsure, if you're young. I mean, I was 23, 24 years old at the time. Some guys we had in there were 18 that were, my classmates were 18 years old, 19 years old. So we had some really young people going in there, and, you're dealing with grown men, hardened offenders. And so I think that your most dangerous weapon in any situation is your mouth and your ability to communicate with other people. And that was impressed upon us in the police academy also, but I think more so in the prison academy, because it's really, that's your lifeline,
Yeah, I would concur. That's in my time as a corrections officer, that was the one thing that was drilled in the most as well. Like if you can talk to a guy for 5 minutes who's having a bad day, maybe you can prevent a fight, or you got to solve situations just by talking to people most of the time. And I had to pull my spray maybe twice and never actually had to use it, because if you're communicating with people and being fair and respectful, like most of the time, unless they're drunk or high, you don't got to mess with them.
Right. And then the building that I was in, luckily, for that, like you said, being intoxicated, we had it was a sentenced building. So, I mean, it wasn't like the intake, where they've got people coming in off the street in all different kinds of state of mind. And, that's a different animal altogether. Ours was sentenced inmates. Those are guys doing their time. They've been sentenced. They're still maximum security inmates, and it's a maximum security facility. They've just been downgraded because of their good behavior, or because the other buildings are full at that point, because we were pretty full every day. We had 1,000 inmates total at my building.
Oh, wow. Producer Britt.
So we all know that Rhode Island is a very small state. Inasmuch, have you ever encountered somebody from outside who was incarcerated?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting question. I don't know. Coincidentally, I was actually talking to my wife about it in the car ride home on Sunday. What a small state it is, and I was in the CVS getting a Mother's Day card with my son, and I happened to see someone that I knew from high school, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" And my son asked me, who was that? And he was really friendly and nice, and I said, "Yeah, he was." He had been, I went to high school with him. I didn't know him very well. I wasn't friends with him or anything like that. We had a pretty big high school, about 2,000 people. And in 1997, he was involved in a very serious motor vehicle accident where he was the driver on Super Bowl Sunday, and he crashed the car. 2 brothers were killed, and another third person was severely handicapped, and he survived, and he was charged, and he did time. And I was doing my count one day as a correctional officer in my block, Fox Left. And I was doing my count, check. Everyone has to stand for the count when you give the count. So you go around when you first come in at 3:00. And sure enough, was a kid I went to high school with. He was sitting right there on his bunk, and he kind of nodded at me. I nodded at him, and it was kind of like that movie. And I said this to my wife the other day. It's kind of like that movie Fight Club, where you're in the club, I know you're in the club. We just nod to each other. It's nothing personal. It's just business. And he was an ideal inmate. He's turned his life around when he got out, and he does talks for drunk driving. He's actively employed. I mean, I'm not friends with him. I haven't seen him, and I hadn't seen him in a very long time since then. But I think that also speaks to what we were talking about earlier, where we're talking about firm, fair, and consistent. If I'd gone in there and been an SOB or a prick or a guy that wasn't fair or kind where I needed to be, he would have remembered that, and I would have been in maybe a little bit of trouble when I brought my son in there to get the CVS card on Mother's Day. And it didn't happen, and it was very polite. And, hey, how you doing? He shook my hand. I shook his hand. And again, it's not personal, it's business. And that's, I think, in keeping with what I was taught there. But yeah, I mean, it's Rhode Island. You bump into people. I bumped into people since I've been on the police department that I had at the prison. And they're like, hey, CO, how you doing? You're doing this? That's great. And, we're not friends. They've been on calls that I've had to go to, and sometimes I've had to arrest them. But it's nothing personal. It's just, that's the way it is sometimes. And again, I treat them fair in the street. I treated them fair there, so they know it's just the way it is. And you get a lot further with that than going in with a different attitude, in my experience. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So going off of that, and just thinking about your working in the prison as a CO, how do you think that time working in the institution helped prepare you for working as a police officer?
It was everything. I mean, you don't realize how inept you are at something until you get thrown into something like that at such a young age. My father was a Rhode Island State Trooper. My grandfather was a Providence policeman. And, this was kind of at my age, I was looking for it to be a springboard to get on a police department, not realizing I'd like it as much as I did, or I'd take as much from it as I did. But for me, being a middle-class, white kid from a suburb, going into this place and everything that came with it, it was everything as far as education, my communication skills, going in there, learning how to deal with people, and just kind of trial by fire, sink or swim, because now it's real. It's not like being on the road where, you don't know if the guy's a bad guy or a good guy. Everyone there is a convicted felon, and they're there doing time. And even at the time, you had to do something very serious to be doing that kind of time. So to me, it was invaluable. I don't think I would be as good as I am, if at all, if I hadn't had that experience going in there and taking as much as I could from it, learning as fast as I did, because again, it's sink or swim. They know who the weak COs are. They know who they can get over on. They know who they can take advantage of. They know who the guy that's going to throw a lobster over the fucking side of the fence, and who's not going to do it. But it's, they know these things. They're smart guys. They're manipulators a lot of times. But it was a great educational experience. I mean, the formal education is great, but I think you can't put a value on how valuable that really was to me, as in my situation as like I said, a young kid from the suburbs, and then all of a sudden learning everything that I learned on the quick.
I want to ask that question almost in reverse. Like, how does your career in policing, from presumably like 2004 to present day, how does that inform your academic views on the correction system?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of changes. I think it's, if I want to speak in academic right now, I mean, I'll say that, they really have moved towards a rehabilitative model and restorative justice and drug courts and veterans courts. And I've seen it. Those things are going on, sometimes with good success, sometimes not. But yeah, I think being able to see, from where I'm at now and looking backwards, seeing the evolution of it, how it's changed, especially with going to school here, that perspective is backed up by what I do see. And so, on the ground where I'm at, and also mirroring what I'm learning at the university, has been pretty damn close, to what's really going on. So that's a great thing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it is important to put to discuss that Mr. Kennedy here will soon be an official double hawk, as we call him. the 2 degrees from Roger Williams. So obviously, really proud about that. But one of the other things that I find quite interesting is when I meet folks who work in law enforcement, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level. The amount of individuals who told me, boy, I the one time in my career that I was nervous is when I had to go into prison. One of my good friends is a retired FBI agent down in Texas. And he told me, he goes, the only time I was nervous is when I had to go into the prisons to interview inmates. And, I hear this, it's a consistent pattern. And it's interesting because when I worked in the prison, I thought in my mind, hey, when I go into a situation, I have a pretty good expectation of what the inmate might have in their cell or wherever the hell they're at. I understand the weapons. I understand, if they're, the likelihood of them being drunk or high, versus when there's a domestic call that you have to go on. That to me, I never had any interest of saying, hey, I want to go in law enforcement, so I go on one of those domestic calls. That just seems terrifying because you never have any clue what the hell you're getting into. And I don't know what are your thoughts about that? Where, comparing, the prison and, having a pretty good understanding about what cell block you're on and who's where, and generally what weapons they have versus, and being, because when they, you're surrounded by nothing but criminals, versus going on that call for domestic when you have no clue what the hell you're getting into. What are your thoughts about that?
I mean, I think at that point, that's a tough question, because I remember, my first day, all my classmates, we all kind of said, hey, let's all meet really early before we go in that first day. All of us will meet together. We'll all go in, kind of like a solidarity thing. And, I had guys that were in the Marine Corps, and a lot of my best friends are in the Marines, and I have a lot of respect for them. And this is not a criticism of them, but I had guys that were in the service and the military, and they were throwing up in the parking lot. And it was like, all right, this is go time. And, I was definitely very nervous those first few days. And then when I think it's like anything. When you walk into a room, you learn how to read a room. If it's a small group of people, a large group of people, in the case of the prison, you walk in and you can feel, for me anyway, I feel that some of that things that are going on there, or like you can feel like something's going to happen, or something tangible is wrong in the way that the guys are being, or you can kind of read that. The prison, I felt pretty good most of the time. There was a few times when the prison's like one of those deals where, I think the best way I would explain it is if you get a guy who likes his schedule, correctional officer, he likes his schedule, he likes knowing where he's going to be at what point of the day, that's a great job for him. If he's that kind of guy and he's wired that way, because a lot of us are, a lot of guys are, a lot of people. And that's mostly what's going to happen. That and mostly every day is the same day over and over again. It's Groundhog Day. But with prison, if something does happen, it's usually really, really bad. And that was the experience that I had. There was several instances that we had where it was mostly, quiet, summertime, or things were going on, and all of a sudden something really bad happened. Then you have 72 inmates fighting, and it's, you're like, I remember running into one code, and I remember to myself, like, thinking, I'm going to get killed, because you just look in this room and you see 72 guys fighting, and you're going, wow. And then the difference with the policing aspect of it. So you've got that guy who likes his every day is the same day. The reason you get into policing is because you like that variety. You're a personality that's drawn to that type of, I don't know what's going to happen today, but let's just deal with it. Let's go, and let's see what happens. So the domestic, and of course, when we're all younger, we're all kind of more gung ho. But the domestic or things like that, that's a source of, hey, let's see what we can find out. Obviously, I think if you lose track of being concerned or nervous, then you've got to kind of check that, because that's a mistake. But so I would say that my best answer would be that the guy that likes his every day, he's a good fit for that prison job, and he's ready for that big one that can happen once in a while. But then on the police department side, it's the kind of personality that he likes that variety. I think that's what attracts that kind of person to those different jobs that are very different in a way.
And excuse me, Josh, can you tell us what drew you to the field of corrections in the first place? And do you have any stories that just cement that really exemplify your time working in corrections?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, what really made, I'll be honest, it was a stepping stone to get to the police department at the time, because I have a lot of family members that are police officers. Again, like I said, my grandfather, my dad, and I'm 23, and I'm like, all right, I got to do something. You get to a certain age as a young man, and you want to pay your own bills, you want to have your own insurance and things like that. And so my father was totally against it. He was like, Josh, you got to be more patient. It'll come. You'll get on the police department. Because when I was trying out, for a small department like I work at, there was 400 guys there for 2 spots. So, and then like the state police was 2,000, Providence was 1,500. I mean, it was tremendous, the amount of people that were competing for these jobs. So it was really tough. So my father looked at it as a step backwards, and he didn't really understand, and so I was like, Dad, I just said to him, listen, I need a job. I need a state job or a good job. I want my own health insurance. I don't want to be on your health insurance anymore. And I want to be independent. I want to do this. And it's a stepping stone, and I need to learn, more. And so for me, I kind of went against what my dad had, and he was supportive once I made my decision. It was just his kind of opinion of when we were talking about it at the time. And so for me, it was like, all right, I got to do this. And I remember sitting in that academy every day, because that academy was difficult. It was tough. The guys, it was very professionalized, very militant. And those guys, if we washed out 30 guys like the first week, and then another 20, I mean, it was a lot. It was a high dropout rate. So, and these guys just went at you, the instructors, the first 2 hours of the day, you're in a jumpsuit, you're in a prison jumpsuit with a ball cap on and shiny shoes, and they're just screaming at you for 2 hours. And so for me, I'm sitting there in the class every day going, oh, I'm doing all of this so I can go work in a prison. What is wrong with me? And so at 23 years old, you're doubting that. And then I think sometimes if, we take our own anxiety and we use it as a motivator, and that's kind of what I did at the time. And I said, I'll take my anxiety, I'll turn it into worst can happen is I can leave at any time. No one's making me stay here. If I tell the guy he's going to open the door, I can walk out and I'm out of here. But I went in, and I had a good group of friends that I went in with, guys that I'm best friends with still to this day, my partner, who I'm still best friends with. And it was a camaraderie that I felt with the guys that I worked with there. And the administration was good. They were good bosses. I actually, a lot of people didn't understand this at the time, because I got the police department job, after a few years, and they were like, that's great, you're going to do that. But I actually turned down the Providence Police Department to stay at the prison, because for 2 reasons. They had, there was a lawsuit that they had that some of the cadets were involved in, where Dean Esserman came in and had our list. I was hired by Providence. I had a conditional offer of hire. My list, what happened is Dean Esserman came in as the new chief of police to kind of clean up the city and clean up the police department because of the previous administrations, Buddy Cianci, and all those things that were going on at the time with promotional exams and all that kind of controversy that followed. So Esserman came in and said, I want this list gone. And so he got rid of all of us. I want a more diverse list. I want different people on this list. I don't want to see the same names, because I did have relatives that worked there. Even though I had an associate's degree, I was a correctional officer. I was fully qualified. I passed all the tests. And so a lot of the people that my peers, they sued for reverse discrimination, and they actually won the lawsuit. And so I met with the lawyer, but they wanted like $2,000. And I said, listen, even at this age, at 25, I'm not going to sue to get a job. And I know how police officers think. I grew up in a law enforcement family. I'm not going to sue to get my job and then to be known as the class of rats that had to sue to get my job. I just wasn't going to do it. And the other thing was there was a residency requirement, and I didn't want to live in Providence itself. So between those 2 things, I actually decided to stay at the prison. So I stayed for another year at the prison because of that, because I enjoyed it so much. And no particular incident that makes me really think of why, but just my partner was there, was one of my good friends. it's more professional, I think, than people give it credit for. Even back then, I hope it's even better now. And guys can make a good career of it. And my classmates are financially, they're doing quite well, and they can always do better. But it is the toughest job to work. If you can work at the prison, you can work on a police department. In my belief, anywhere.
Yeah, so on this podcast, we review a lot of media, and I review movies on this podcast. I assume you probably watch a lot of prison and policing films because, we all do. What's your favorite cop or prison movie?
Oh, well, here's the thing. I try not to watch things that are too realistic because I don't want to bring that home.
Fair.
Because I do feel like you have to separate. Like my son watches this SWAT show on CBS with my wife, and I just sit there and I let them enjoy it because it's a show. It's a good show, and it's got a nice message and all that stuff. And so, but I just sit there like this, my lips are zipped. I'm not critical, but so that's fine to watch. But as far as but things that are really kind of close to reality, I kind of steer away from because I do like to separate it and be not a different person, but come home, be dad, be husband, and put work where it belongs and work. I'm not one of these guys that lives it 24/7. And the only reason I know that is because I've learned that from friends and different people that I've come in contact over the years that it's all they have at the end of it. And I don't want to be one of those guys.
Fair.
So with that said, my two favorite movies, I would say there's a movie called Blood In, Blood Out from a long time ago. It's a prison movie, probably from the early 90s, maybe. And it's got like Lou Diamond Phillips, I believe, in it. And that movie, it goes from them being in the gang to being in the prison. And to me, that's a good watch. I mean, it's a pretty obscure movie, but that's a really good one. My favorite police movie is probably the movie Heat, Michael Mann movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. In my mind, I mean, it's the best gunfight of any movie ever. And my dad said, let's go to the movies. And I went and saw that movie in the movie theater with him and my other brother, who was a fireman. And so that was a treat. So those would be my two probably favorite ones for that. But I mean, I'm a movie guy too, so I mean, I could go on probably, but
that's one of the when it comes to popular culture, movies, television. Sometimes I end up getting mad at what the hell we're seeing because it's like Oz was just so bad because you had somebody being raped, assaulted, every 30 seconds, and I think one of the things that Shawshank did. Now, granted, they didn't really show this, but Morgan Freeman's character Red talked about it. Is for the inmates. What prison time is it's the monotony, it's the routine, it's the same thing constantly, and that's where a lot of the punishment comes from. Is just that obviously that loss of freedom, but also no control over where you're at the institution, where you have to be. And obviously that depends a whole lot on the security level, but I know I've been inside some prisons where every little movement is controlled and the inmates have no control over it, and they're there at the exact same time every day, all the time. And when I watch these movies and it's just constant beatings and constant sexual assaults, and it's just that, I don't know, it seems to drive me nuts. I get frustrated with them and I just can't watch. It's like the experience of working in the criminal justice field and the education about it ruins some things for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. But one thing that rings true with that movie especially is that building, I believe, was in Maine. That if you go inside Max in Cranston, that's exactly what it looks like in there. I mean, that's what that. I don't know if you guys have been in there, but when you walk into that place, it looks exactly like the inside. And it's like you're stepping through time. Really, really is.
So the prison where they filmed it at, it's the old Ohio State Reformatory. So shout out to Ohio producer Brett. And what they've done is so the back half of that prison has been removed. The front of it, the major castle-like looking feature that you see when they start off is still there, and it's a tourist attraction. And one of my favorite things you can do there right now is go visit on an overnight ghost tour, and they will take you down into the depths of the solitary confinement, and you can stay overnight. And of course, it's, you can imagine a building that old is not sealed up too tight, and so when the wind blows through, there's the ghost of such and such visiting us, that kind of bullshit.
Yeah.
But it's I've been there a couple times to do the tour, and they have they have the regular tour, and then they have the Hollywood tour where they show you all of the props that have been left over from the different movies that have been filmed there. And I think that's a big part of the reason why they keep it, is just because the state makes money off the movies that are filmed there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And to answer your question, yes, we've been fortunate. Both Bronson and I teach undergraduate corrections, and we take our classes there every year for a tour. And it's only in this most recent year we've been unable to go to the maximum security facility. There's some kind of PREA issue, being that it's the old style with the bars.
Mm-hmm.
So something about my understanding was it's something about how you can there's too much visibility for people, something like that.
Yeah, I mean what they did when they hired us, before they gave us our final interview. So you go through the whole process, the physical, the psych test, all that stuff. So right before your interview with the director of the ACI, who was A.T. Wall at the time, you go to his office. But first they take you to Max and they walk you through, and you go to SEG, and they probably have the guys, I'm sure that the inmates are in on it, where they're like, hey, I need the biggest couple of guys we have. They put them in the SEG cell, and then they're just staring at you the whole time, and you're just doing a tour walkthrough. And then so they kind of rattle you, and then with that, and these guys are just staring at you. They rattle you. This 6'8" guy in the cell we can reach through, and then they take you to the director's office for your interview. So it is definitely a trial by fire on that one.
That's kind of awesome. It's like a reverse Scared Straight almost.
Right.
Can you handle this?
Yeah, I mean, some of it even too is interesting, because some of the guys, my classmates, they offered them the job right there in the office, and then some of us, they made us wait. So it was like this whole setting you off on this mind games kind of, be aware, that these things are going on, and this is what we're going to subject you to, and then maybe we'll give you the job. Do you want the job? So you talk to your friends, what I mean? So it was just, it was tremendous, mental anguish for a few days.
It establishes mental fortitude, though.
Yeah.
Maybe the idea. I'm not sure.
Right.
Out of curiosity, what do you miss most from your time working at Rhode Island DOC? What do you miss most about the job, the setting, any of it?
I mean, I'm glad that I did what I'm glad that I am where I am. I'd say I miss the guys, because it was a good group of people that I worked with. Like I said, I keep in contact with some of them now. One of them's one of my best friends. I would miss that. Just kind of, and then you're going in, and there is an aspect of me, my personality, that likes to know what my day is going to look like. I'm not saying I'm a nut with planning or anything like that, but hey, at 3:00, we're going to do the count. At we're going to get, and I mean, it helps you be an efficient time manager in your regular life. I'll tell you that, and always be on time. But for me, I missed some of that schedule where, then from 4:00 to 5:00, we're going to feed the guys. We're going to feed 1,000 guys in 1 hour, which I always thought was amazing. And then
that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing feat to me, and get the guys fed. And then from 5:00 to 6:15, you're going to go work out or play basketball or go get some food or whatever you want to do. And then you come back in. You're in the block. You can be around the guys, do a couple cell searches, do some reading. Talk to the inmates, see what if they've got problems too. They come to you. You're sitting at the table in the block. And then at 9:30, 10 o'clock, you shut it all down, and you go in the block and in the bubble and talk to the guys, and then you're on the way out. So I like that, a regimented schedule to a degree.
Yeah. For someone who likes routine, as you were saying earlier, it's perfect for the person who wants everything to be just as it is in a certain way each day. There's something comforting, I'm sure, to some people.
Yeah, definitely.
And you were talking personality. Based on your personality, like what style or approach to inmate management did you take? Like we talked, it was something that we would talk about when I was in academy, where like some people are the enforcers, some people are people workers, some people are like the hardliners. They're stricter, laying on more discipline, the hard asses, and like some of us are more geared to like diplomats. How did you see yourself, and what was your approach to working with inmates?
Mine would be, I want to be like a guy that, because the enforcer, he's not going to last. Okay, he's not gonna. You don't need him every day, and if you try and go in there and do that, you're going to burn. You're going to burn out. I mean, nobody can keep up that level for a long time. So I think there's a middle ground of being the guy that an inmate can feel like if he's got an issue, he can come talk to you. But I also want to be the other guy. I want to be the middle ground guy on that aspect. Okay, the communications, approachable type guy, yes. But also the side of me that I don't want them to know is my intelligence gathering side. So without their knowledge, I want to know everything that's going on. And I'm going to talk to that guy when nobody else sees me because I know he runs shit. And we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to tell him what's going on. What are we going to do? And he's not my friend. I'm not his friend. But he is doing a life sentence. And he likes his nice, comfortable bed up there and his quiet when he wants his quiet. So he wants the same thing I want. And if we can communicate that to each other and harmlessly, information exchange and communicate, that's great. So I want my intelligence to be the hardline guy, intelligence guy. That's me. Middle of the road as far as approachable. And then when it comes down to it, if something bad happens, then I'm the guy that I'm going to do whatever I have to do to survive.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I never saw lifers since I worked in a jail. And so were lifers like this spring of information for the COs in general?
You'd call them the heavy, like you'd know who it is and be like, listen, and I'd say to the guys, I'd be like, when every guy came in and we had a flow of guys coming and going and we had the same, like if you're on the top tier, you were a single bunk. So that was huge. Like imagine not having to go to the bathroom in front of another man for 20 years. That'd be great.
Awesome.
It's awesome, right? That's a huge privilege that you're not going to tell most people and they're going to understand, but it's big. And so having that privacy, having that single room to yourself, and then the guys on the first floor are all double bunked. And so you'd have these younger kids come in and you'd say to them, listen, first day, I'd be like, listen, I'm not going to chase you around. If I see you playing cards, do I know you're gambling? Absolutely. For a bag of chips, fine. You know what? I'm not going to lose my mind over that because I'm not going to get ass cancer being concerned about the little things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you have a little leeway. But when I need you to go in at the end of the night and I say lock it up, or if something's happening and I don't have time to answer questions because we're in an emergency or something's going on, I need you to do exactly what I say without question immediately. And as long as we kind of had that, that kind of rapport, I'll call it, then if I had anything else I needed, and they conformed great. We had some guys that didn't off the bat, and I'd have the heavy come up to me and be like, hey, dude, are those guys causing you some shit? And I'd be like, well, they give me a little bit of aggravation at the end of the night. I'm going to take care of it. And they're like, nah, and they wouldn't do anything physical. It wasn't like, like the TV shows we were talking about, like Oz or anything like that, where they'd go stick them or anything like that. But they'd just say, listen, this CO's fair. Don't fuck with him. And they would conform, and then if I had to get involved, then I would get involved and be punitive if I had to. But usually didn't get that far. Usually it's an interesting, it's a world in itself, and how you manage it. I think you have to be very flexible.
Yeah. There's only so much, like the extent of your social control as the officer only goes so far, where you do also have to rely on the social control of other inmates. If they're not going to listen to you, they will listen to those other inmates. And so getting some of those inmates on your side can be a huge asset.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also true where, if something really, really bad does happen, sometimes you do have those inmates that actually will stick up for you. If you're getting your head caved in, there'll be another inmate. Sometimes it's like, all right, stop. All right, enough. And they wield power there because the guy that's doing life, what are you going to do? Give him 2 lives? I had a guy one day that really, this made me see that, as a young guy, this is one of those aha moments that I had to have a guy sign the court list to go down to court. Okay. He was a big guy, big Hispanic guy, and never had a problem with him, just kept to himself. And I went to him like, dude, you didn't sign the court list. And he's like, yeah, all right. He didn't sign the court list. I went up to him again. I'm like, listen, you go down and sign the court list. Yep, I'll go down and do it. So the third time he didn't do it. Now I'm a fair guy, but at the end of the day, I still have a job to do. I'm like, listen, what is the friggin' problem? Why are you not going down to the court list? What is the problem? You need to get down there and sign it right now. And he goes, listen, man, I just got back from federal court today and I got 380 years and they're moving me to Ohio in a couple of days. So I'm not in a rush to get down to your fucking court list. And I went, fair enough. What am I going to say to that guy?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, great point.
Because he was dealing guns, and the federal government has their lovely way of charging each gun 50 year, 50 year, 50 year, 50 year. And so that guy will never see the light of day again, see his kids, and they're moving him away, so he's never going to see anybody. And so he's having a real bad day. And that's when you have to know, okay, do I want to be the enforcer hard ass guy right there and get into a confrontation with him? Or do I want to say, I call down and say, you know what, have the guy come up and have him sign the court list at his freaking cell because he's not coming down and he's just got 300 years. So you know what, let's do it. And then you figure it out.
Yeah, you don't make that your hill to die on.
Right.
No.
Right. Well, it's interesting. One of the things I talk about in classes a lot, or when I'm dealing with, just people, lay person, when it comes to corrections, is very similar to what you were just mentioning. Talking about some of the people who I felt like I had an easier time working with, and those were all the murderers, because they didn't commit other crimes. And they're going to be in there 25 to life. This was in Kentucky, 25 to life. And overwhelmingly, they weren't my problem inmates. Now, the drug dealers, the gangbangers, yeah, they were the ones that are, they were in there. They were young. They were in there for shorter time periods. They were still real excitable. And those are the ones I really felt like I couldn't trust at all. Because they were running into gangs inside the institution, where a lot of these murderers, like you're talking about, somebody staying to themselves, they seem to be individuals that were easier to talk to, and you could have a little bit more understanding of, why when they were in moods, why they were. It wasn't just something like, an inmate looked at me the wrong way earlier. There's something serious going on, and they just tended to be my better inmates.
I agree. That was my experience as well. The people that were doing the most time, by and large, because now they have to reconfigure their entire life. Okay, getting out and being on the other side of that fence is never going to be an option. So what do I have to look forward to? Church, lifting weights, going to play sports, going to eat, going to their job. So if anything, that's their life now, and they reconfigure their brain over time to accept that. And understandably, that's what they look forward to. That'd be the only time that they really would be difficult to deal with, because again, they're there to make what they can of their life, what they have left of it to do. And so those privileges that seem tiny to us, or something probably a college student first year, introduction to corrections type thing would not be able to understand what that means to them, because they can't put themselves in a situation where they're, okay, I'm doing life in this building.
Right.
But yeah, my experience mirrors yours in that way, that I definitely had. And they were the kind of, because a lot of times it'd be like, okay, it was a younger guy. The guy was drunk or on drugs, crime of passion.
Right.
Not a guy that, when he's not effed up, not a guy that's going to just go kill anybody. But it happened to be that day, that amount of whatever they took or whatever they did, that heated of a confrontation, and that's what happened. And then all of a sudden, now they're there for the rest of their lives.
I guess in terms of like social control and like personal safety, did you like feel in greater danger as a corrections officer with a volatile population, or as a police officer with unpredictable calls?
It's tough because, like I said earlier, I've been in equal fear at both jobs of different situations. So, when I had a huge code with 72 guys fighting, I thought, okay, this could be it. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to get hurt really bad and back my partner up. And there was a couple really big ones that we had. It was the largest disturbance that they had at the building since the riots back in the day. It actually required a secondary response, which means every single person from the building goes to that block where we had to go. And so that was because those guys have nothing to lose. It's hand-to-hand combat. You don't have tools. You're relying on this. This is out the mouth is out the door because it's just chaos at that point. So I mean, there's no it's do what you have to do to survive. But there's been times so that's a very difficult situation to be in, like that confined area where you're in this block and it looks like a bad prison movie from when you review the tape and you go, that looks like one of those MSN specials. Oh my God, I was down there. Yeah. So it's almost scarier after you survive it. And then, but there's been times, like you said, where there's domestics and you're in the third floor of a tenement house at 3 a.m. and there's a domestic going on. And, all of a sudden the guy's fighting with you. And before you know it, you're fighting for your life and your backup's trying to get there and you could be, by yourself for a few minutes. And then all of a sudden, while you're trying to arrest the guy who was just beating up his girlfriend really badly so that she has to go to the hospital, she's now jumping on your back, punching you. So it's like now, so these are the situations where you're in this little tiny room and you're trying to fight and you're trying to make an arrest and you're trying to do what you need to do while your backup's on the way. And that's a scary thing. But I'd say they're different environments, but the fear of both those situations has been just as intense in my experience. That's the best answer I could give.
That was a very good answer, though. The last question I've got for you: what advice would you offer anyone interested in going into the field of corrections?
Well, the best advice that I would give is, I think I started with it, is that communication. If you're a person that is not, you don't have to be outgoing, but you have to be a clear communicator. You have to, be able to listen. I think listening is huge. You can't just go into that job and just expect to bark orders or to just tell people what to do. It's not a power trip job because you won't survive it. You'll just, like I said, you'll burn out. To be able to de-escalate, I know that's a trendy word to say, but to de-escalate people when they're having a difficult situation, and just you have to kind of take your own. At times when you're in that job, you'll have to take yourself out of your own BS and your own life and your own things that are going on, and really try and relate. Like, what's this guy going through? Like, why is he acting this way? Because he can't go to church. Like, what is the big deal? Church is tomorrow too, but to him, that's all he has. So I would say that to not only communicate, diffuse situations, but to try and put yourself where they're at and what he's trying to get out of it, and maybe trying to understand his situation a little better. I'm not saying be a pushover, not at all. I'm just saying to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and say, okay, maybe I'm trying to understand this in a good faith way.
Yeah, I like that. So approaching some difficult situations with empathy and recognizing that there's context behind why people act certain ways.
And I'd say if I was giving advice, I'd say you want to think of yourself as a multi-tool player. You want to not just be a guy that can talk, because he can talk. Josh can talk, but guess what? We can get over on him because he's weak. So you have to be a multi-tool player where you can be the tough guy if you have to be. You can be the counselor if you have to be. You can be the guy that, enacts policy if you have to. You can be the guy that listens. You can be the guy that helps somebody. You're the guy that renders aid sometimes, And so you've got so many different jobs in that one job that it encompasses. You want to be a multi-tool player, and that would be my other piece of advice too.
Yeah, I like that. And one thing you mentioned earlier, like with the enforcer, the guy who, like, the inmate twitches funny and they put him on the ground. That those were like the most miserable people I've ever worked with.
Yeah, I mean, I think in law enforcement in general, there's two different types of personalities. There's the guy that, he's a pretty social guy and he'd like to do some good in the world, maybe like to leave the world a little better off than when he was there, and people say, oh, this guy make a difference and all that good stuff. And then there's the guys that got stuffed into their lockers and then now they're out for vengeance against the rest of the world. And those are difficult guys to have in the job because they can't understand the difference between what they're doing now and what happened to them when they were younger, and that's not somebody, these psychological tests probably don't eliminate those guys because they're not able to determine that. But in my experience, you've got great guys that are, sociable, played sports, didn't play sports, whatever. It takes all kinds of different personalities and people. There's a job for everybody. But at the same time, there are those people that the ones that act the hardest and they have the worst attitude and they are you looked at me wrong, so now I'm going to make you do X, Y, Z or whatever. Those are the guys that had something else go on in their lives to make them act that way. and they're not good
and
at that job.
well, and I think a lot of those individuals that you're talking about there are the ones we're seeing in the police world that are on social media doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They, rather than trying to de-escalate situations, they go in and say, "Hey, I haven't tackled somebody in a while, so let me go tackle somebody," and they, excessive force too quickly. It's one of the things that I jokingly say to my students when they're graduating is, "Look, I don't want to see you on social media, on YouTube or on TikTok in a few years because you went in and you decided, hey, I want to see how tough I am against somebody." Trying to talk people down to be, in these situations is really something that that I think that these up and comers that are going to be going into the criminal justice world need to really focus on. I know that, talking with police chiefs, the number one thing that they say, oh, this generation has trouble speaking because all they do is text with one another. And so they get out there in the street and, they've learned that they have this nice little thing called a taser, and they don't speak and they tase because that's been, that they've been told all these years that it's not lethal, but obviously it creates all kinds of problems. And they said, just, send us people who can talk and, more importantly, listen to what people are saying, so that they don't want to just, jump on people and tackle them and try and wrestle everybody.
I don't think that the people that's their desire to do, I don't think they could survive a 25-year career now. I mean, I agree. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive in your profession, doing what you need to do. You can be aggressive with, car stops, enforcement, warrant attempts, and if a guy does fight, and then you do what you have to do and you effect the arrest, and that's fine. But, excessive force, any of those things, I mean, there's so much, every single person walking around has an HD camera. And you're not just doing 20 years now. You're mandated to do 25 or be 55 or 50 years old, and so that personality, I think it will lessen over time because there's just so much oversight now that I think as a byproduct of that, it'll weed itself out because and like you said earlier, it is a difficult time with some of the younger people. But I think once if you can shape somebody into something as far as, getting them to come out of their shell a little bit, communicate more, it's possible. They're still young, and there's still people that, I was, like I said, a kid from the suburbs at 24, and I learned pretty fast and I needed to. And I think a lot of our young people, I think one of the last things that I would say about things right now is that, was there 400 people going for my job that I took and there was a lot more competition? Absolutely. Are there only 12 applicants now for the 4 jobs that are up right now in my place? Sometimes. But the people that are applying and the people that are taking the job, they really want to do it. Yeah. And they really want to be there. So while all this negative stuff it is in the field and going on in our society, the people and the young people that are getting involved with it are there because they really want to be. And that's a good thing.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Any further questions, Britt or Eric?
No, because we had some similar ones, and I don't want to hit the nail on the head.
I actually got as producer, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask this question. Do you have anything to plug or recommend?
No, I do not. But I appreciate the plug. I do appreciate that. I don't have any gear or swag or anything that I do at this point. But no, I appreciate the opportunity. But no, not at this time. I'll let you know if I do, though.
You don't want to help out the Rhode Island Department of Corrections and saying they are always taking applications.
Well, if they're
get on their website.
Any police department, any young people that would think of applying at corrections, at the Department of Corrections, or a police department locally, it's a rewarding career. I would do it all over again. I would do a few things differently, but I think we all would in our own lives with anything. But it's still a great career. It's still something young people should get involved in. I think that hopefully, as things calm down in our society, hopefully that more people will get involved, and it'll be the profession that that has the potential to be.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like the optimistic looking
Yeah.
toward the future.
I do
You
too.
have to.
Because looking back, there are some of that younger faculty that I hired. If I could make some different choices.
Well, that's. I'm graduating pretty soon, so I'll let you know. So always thinking.
Yeah. One step ahead.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Kennedy, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us here on Prison Breakdown, and I will make sure you get the link when we do publish this.
Thank you very much. Be well, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Two, three, break!
Damn.
Yeah, dude. That interview was popping.
Hell
Yes,
yeah.
it was.
The Prison Breakdown podcast would like to formally thank you, Mr. Joshua Kennedy, for appearing on our podcast.
Indeed.
Thank you.
And with that,
And you?
is it time for a library lockdown?
Library lockdown.
Library lockdown.
Library lockdown. Library lockdown. Come on in and take a look, 'cause it's time to review a book at Library lockdown. Library lockdown. Library lockdown. Library lockdown.
You know how I can tell when one of Producer Brit's songs is effective is when I hear my wife singing "Library Lockdown" around the house. It's a sign.
It is.
That's fantastic.
I'm flattered. I'm flattered that this podcast is invading your personal space.
Taylor Swift, watch out.
Coming for her. I'm a tortured poet too. So the last year, it took me a year to read this book, and I'll tell you why. It was my beach book, and so I stopped reading it like 75% of the way through last year when I stopped going to the beach, and I just went to the beach again, and I finished it. So...
what is said book?
The said book is Prison Land, Mapping Carceral Power Across Neoliberal America by Brett Story from 2019. Prison Land is an exploration of how power and space affect, regulate, and perpetuate our modern carceral state. The book is organized through a series of chapters discussing different venues and institutions of power that aim for a continuance in hegemony through America's modern prison system. The book begins with an exploration of how real estate markets, specifically in impoverished cities, but quickly gentrifying cities such as Detroit, affect carceral states. It further explores other locations such as New York and their advent of so-called million-dollar blocks, and also Appalachia in their historical poverty and resource extraction, leaving a desolate landscape where one of the only options in life is crime and prison. After this, Story explores what I find to be the most fascinating chapter in the book, capturing and retelling the stories of New York prison visitor buses and the sacrifices these people make to visit their incarcerated loved ones. After this, Story explores social controls and how to fix our carceral state in material ways and by not just whitewashing our existing institutions. The book closes on the nature of prisons as a space of disappearance and how society aims to hide its problems instead of addressing them. Overall, this book was an absolute banger. Every institution Story touches is thoroughly analyzed and broken down into incredibly digestible thoughts, fixes, and philosophies. For anybody interested in the carceral system, what's wrong with it, and possible fixes, this book is for you. If I have any criticisms for this book, it's occasionally written a little dryly, and some chapters, Story puts aside the human elements for a more academic breakdown of systems. But that aside, it reads very well, it's full of incredible information, and the conclusions it makes I agree with nearly universally. 4.5 out of 5 soups.
I completely agree with that assessment. I finished this book last year, And Prison Land was maybe one of the more memorable prison-related books I've read in a while. It's innovative. It's hard to lose your attention because every chapter jumps to a different place. It jumps to a different phenomena that he's exploring, and his writing is it's eloquent. It's not too academic at times, and he's concise enough to get right to the point. It's well done, and it's a book that's left me thinking. I give very few 5 stars, but I would give this certainly 4.5 soups.
Mhm.
So it sounds like something I've missed out on here. So it looks like I've got to put this on my bookshelf and read it soon. But I love this idea of prison as space as an issue in terms of where we're placing them. It's so clear to see this trend of especially in places like Appalachia, where they go in and the Department of Corrections or the Federal Bureau of Prison goes in and promising jobs. Here are these good jobs to these places where people just don't seem to have a whole lot of hope. So if you look at the coal industry disappearing from Appalachia, there's nothing available. And they hey, we're bringing in a prison complex. There's going to be 4 prisons. We're looking at about 3,000 permanent jobs. And then once it's built, 90% of the people who work at the prisons are shipped in from other institutions throughout the country or throughout the state. And there's very few brand new jobs in that area, sometimes because the people aren't qualified for them, but also there was no plan to hire 3,000 brand new people from, in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, which is a good example of where they went in and did this several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating parts of the book to me was less about where we're putting the prisons in terms of carceral spaces, but when he examines Detroit and he's looking at where do people come from, like where do concentrations of people come from that end up in carceral spaces. And in talking about Detroit in this rapidly gentrifying city, he's talking about the advent of like private security and how that's taken over the city, and how there's this billionaire who has taken over so much of Detroit, and he has like a giant model of Detroit in one of his offices, and there's like he lights up every building that he owns in Detroit, and he's just like slowly been taking over piece by piece of Detroit. It's very interesting and something I didn't realize was happening right now. We could assume things, but it's nice to actually see the information on the page and actually give context to something like this.
Not coincidentally, this billionaire, like the property he owns, because there's private security there, it's afforded a lot more actual police presence, and a lot more property crimes are actually arrested and prosecuted from those properties, which is something that leads to the gentrification. It's just like getting rid of these, the populations of these real estate developers do not want by housing them in, prisons.
Was the billionaire named Dan Gilbert?
Don't quite recall. I read that chapter last year.
Just because Dan Gilbert is a billionaire. I know he was born in Detroit, and he still has a lot of power in Detroit.
It is Dan Gilbert.
Yeah,
I'm looking at the index right now. Yep.
And the only reason I happen to know him is he has a Cleveland connection, and yes, exactly. Yeah, Cleveland connection. He happens to own one of the sports teams in Cleveland, and so that's the only reason why I happen to know. But I know he had strong ties to Michigan and Detroit, so it could be him.
Yep, definitely him.
Can we all agree that Detroit style pizza, really good pizza, and their deep dish pizza is fantastic?
One of my favorite styles of pizza.
I cannot agree with that. I'm on the New Haven keg. I don't like deep dish at all. You're just eating cardboard. Mm-hmm. I want New Haven pizza, and Professor Strah, with how close you have ties to New Haven, you've got to be going there a lot to be getting that pizza.
I don't think I've been there once since my wife started her job there.
Holy shit. You have to take a podcast beatdown for that. This is the greatest pizza town in America. It is the heart of, it's the best pizza in the world, without a doubt. I can't believe
Best
you have
pizza in America.
It's in the world. It's in, nothing else comes close
to
to
the
it.
top 3 places in New Haven for pizza, and I was underwhelmed by all but one of them. Sally's was pretty good. Frank Pepe's was incredibly underwhelming. And then the last place was also pretty underwhelming.
Modern or Bar New Haven?
Modern.
Yeah.
Modern.
My favorite
Bar
of
New
them
Haven
all.
is perfect.
Bar New Haven is my favorite, and
I
then
don't think I've been there.
Sally's. Yeah.
Sally's was a pretty good slice. Frank Pepe,
Yeah.
like for how much it was hyped up, I was disappointed.
Well, what's funny is when I moved there, it was very clear. Talking to the locals, you go to one or the other. You don't go to both. Like, you know, that's one of the you go to Sally's or Pepe's, and there was no, you can't go back and forth. And what the hell? Yeah,
I don't think that's true.
Oh no, you talk to the locals; they'll tell you. See, you got to ingrain yourself a little bit in that weird Connecticut culture.
Yeah,
you know, it's such an odd place.
I will argue Connecticut has a lack of culture.
Well, it's because they're so,
seen.
you know, their culture is very similar to New Jersey in that, you know, what's great about it is their proximity to a city in another state. Look, there's New York. There's New York City, and that's what's great about our state.
Yeah, I like to take the city on its own merits, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Not for me.
Yeah, no, I'm not a giant fan of Connecticut either. But
yeah, I don't know about best pizza city. I think there's a few New Yorkers who might be ready to disagree with you on that point.
New York has superior pizza for sure, and there's places in New Jersey that definitely have superior pizza. Honestly, Seattle has better pizza than New Haven.
I've been out this. Yeah, I've tried it. Been down. There's nothing that comes close to New Haven.
I'd put the top 3 pizzas in Seattle against the top 3 in New Haven any day of the week.
When you come out here next, you should bring pizzas and we can do a head-to-head.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
One will be microwaved.
Yes.
So we have to give it a handicap.
We know we warm it up in an air fryer. It comes out a little bit crispy.
That's true. I've been using that air fryer all the time, my friend.
I like to do mine in a cast iron pan. Put a little bit of olive oil on the bottom.
There you go.
It's
there you go.
Like a pan pizza.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, my dad. Anytime I warm up a slice of pizza, besides that method, he tells me I'm doing it wrong, and I don't like that. So so instead, I just don't do it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I love my father, but I refuse to believe there is one right way to do it.
No one cares. It's leftover pizza. It's a joy anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed. So with that, shall we move to the movie minute?
Let's movie.
Movie minute. Movie minute. 60 seconds with producer Britt to talk about movies.
Movie Minute is a song that definitely sticks in my head throughout the day. Now, I don't know that I'm walking around the house singing it, but of all of our songs, that's the one that sticks in my head.
I hum it. I find myself humming it while I'm doing yard work all the time. It has infected me.
I love it.
I made it to be an earworm. Yeah. So
you made it to steal the "Let's All Go to the Lobby" song, but be like a modern retelling of that song, and it works. It's so good.
Absolutely, what I did, 100%. What else I did was this week, today actually, I watched 2009's Madea Goes to Jail.
Yes.
Probably maybe the worst sentence I have had so far on this podcast. Madea Goes to Jail, written, directed, and produced and starred in by none other than Tyler Perry. The movie tells 2 stories which intermingle. One of Madea, mad black woman, elderly, played by Tyler Perry, from the titular Diary of a Mad Black Woman, taking state-required anger management on going to prison for being a criminal and forklifting a white woman's car. The other story centers around a young assistant district attorney, Josh, trying to save his childhood friend turned prostitute, Candace. This movie nearly broke me. Tyler Perry can only speak dialogue that furthers the plot or sets up a joke about an old person being naughty. He also exists in a universe where only he is allowed for the meant-to-be funny lines, but his delivery is so garbage that none of them land. I think maybe the worst part of this film is the fact that Perry occasionally shows promise as a director and cinematographer, setting up competent shots and capturing decent performances from his actors, especially in the non-comedic moments. Overall, this movie stunk, disjointed, unfunny, and seemingly not for anybody. How it made back 5 times its budget makes me lose faith in America. Out of 5 soups.
Oh,
How many did you give it? 0?
1.5.
1.5.
Oh, you give it a half.
1.5.
Now, my understanding,
Serious scenes actually weren't terrible, which is kind of what the movie centered around more, the Josh and Candace storyline, just in the way that Diary of a Mad Black Woman centered around that the romance plot more. In as much, I don't think I said that Madea was the titular Mad Black Woman in Diary of a Mad Black Woman. I don't think she was actually. She was just the comedic relief character.
So this is not your first Madea film that you
This
viewed?
is like the 3rd, 4th Madea. I think I've seen one of the Boo a Madea Halloween as well. And I've seen Mad Black Woman a couple times for some reason.
Is this the worst of them all?
This is the worst one I've seen, yes.
This movie is dreadful.
Yeah.
Oh, you've seen it as well?
Yeah, I've seen it as well. Back when I used to try and watch as many prison corrections movies as possible, this came out, and I've been a fan of Tyler Perry for a long time.
That's a weird thing to admit.
Yeah, why?
Oh, because come on. And to be honest, we were gonna talk about it in one of my corrections classes at the school I was at down in Texas, and I watched it. It was a semester or 2 after. It was like in the fall semester following its release, and it was just such a horrible movie. I don't know. The one of the scenes that really sticks out to me is that stupid forklift scene where she damages the car. It's awful. And to give it 1.5, I couldn't do that. I'm under 1 soups. I mean, it's like a 0.8 soup.
If just the Madea storyline and like that whole plot line, yes, it is like a 0 soups film.
Yeah,
it is miserable. Like every second Tyler Perry is in the film, I cringe. But it doesn't even center around Madea and Tyler Perry's characters. They're just comic relief. Like he plays like 3 different like old wild people who just like do crazy things, and like they're just like old and horny and like drinking and doing crimes, and I don't
know. Yeah.
Now, I have 2 questions about it. I know that "good afternoon" is a Madea catchphrase. Does Madea say that in this film?
Maybe. I don't quite recall. I mean, a lot of it takes place at night, so I don't know. I don't recall. I'm sorry. I would take
good evening.
Afternoon. Yeah, good evening. Good evening, then good night.
Also, being the second notable Goes to Jail film that you've watched, how does it compare to Ernest Goes to Jail?
It is a pale shadow.
And that's saying something.
No. Ernest Goes to Jail is a fun,
I know
silly.
You liked it.
I love it. It is. I will defend that film. It knows what it is. It's exactly what it needs to be, and it's successful at what it is. I think this film might be successful at what it is. I just think what it is really sucks. I watch it and I'm like, who is this for? And I'm sure there's like a demographic it is for, but I don't understand it.
Does it have a political perspective at
No,
all?
not really. Except for maybe like old black women should be able to commit crimes.
I've always said that.
It's not unreasonable. It's demographics. I'd much rather not be committing crimes.
Well, there's a follow-up one. Madea in witness protection or some crap like that.
Yeah, I believe that.
Have you seen that?
I have not.
I'm after watching Madea Goes to Jail.
Mm-hmm.
It just took me away from anything, following up and be like, okay, this isn't. It's such ridiculous, superficial slapstick humor. That wasn't that funny. I don't know. So I haven't watched anything else since then. I guess there's a big family one, right? Where it's kind of like the Brady Bunch one.
Oh, the Meet the Browns or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Know.
Boy, I sound like an old grouchy old man, don't I?
I've always said that about you too.
Diary of a grouchy old white man over here.
Oh. Yep.
Well, I have a good sentence for you.
Nice.
In anticipation of your upcoming trip to Providence, I would like to sentence you to the most recent film I can think of set in Providence, called Ricky Stenicki.
Is it a prison film?
It is not a prison film. It's just a Providence film.
It's ridiculousness.
Blood In, Blood Out, the film that Lieutenant Kennedy recommended.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
that would be a good one.
Yeah, I'd like to do that too, but it wouldn't be much of a prison sentence for you here on Prison Breakdown. If
it's missing the goal.
Why do you make me watch?
The goal is to get you to watch just dreadful, horrible films.
Why?
Because you're being sentenced, damn it.
Because you enjoy them.
At least sentence me to watch like a prison-related terrible film. There's a lot of them. There's a lot that I haven't reviewed yet. I haven't reviewed Big Stan yet.
I thought you did. No.
I've just talked about it in relation, I think, to Let's Go to Prison because they're kind of the same film.
But so you've seen it already then?
Yeah, but like I haven't reviewed it on this podcast. I don't know. Make me review prison films. This is a prison podcast. Let's stay on topic over here. Stop dog shit.
Okay, fine. You're sentenced to Ricky Stenicki and Blood In, Blood Out.
Nice. Put his ass to work.
I'm billing for all this. I don't even have a billing code for this.
I'm not sure if our sponsor will agree to that.
Okay, whatever. Ricky Stenicki, sure. Fine.
I think Blood In, Blood Out would be a good candidate though for next year's movie Main It. Actually,
yeah,
we're gonna wait a whole year for that again, huh?
Well, yeah, that's the one time of year we're allowed to talk about movies.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to think of other months that start with M, and so we've got March and May. March is already passed. So
November.
November movie.
November.
No, nobody calls it Movember except for that people who do that dumb mustache thing.
What is that mustache thing for? It's to raise money for
isn't it
testicular cancer? It's research.
Yeah. So why does that and No Nut November fall on the same month?
I have no clue. See, this is one of the. I will admit, I'm too old for this shit. I don't get it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I have no clue. Sorry, I'm out of touch.
Out of touch and out of time. We got anything else on the podcast?
No, I think we're out of touch and out of time. You can look forward to the future of movie Movember, I guess, and producer Britt's upcoming review of Ricky Stenicki.
Great.
The Prison Breakdown podcast would once again like to thank the Roger Williams School of Justice Studies and Lieutenant Josh Kennedy of West Warwick PD. Also, thank you for listening. Please like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Anything else we have to cover?
Yes, lights out.
I'll bring you back inside. Put on a blanket and sit by the firelight. A million thoughts on your mind. You'll be alright. I'm by your side. I'll bring you back inside. Put on a blanket and sit by the firelight. A million thoughts on your